The Hunted Cat. I never believed in curses or spirits or any of the horror stories the old folks would whisper about the old house at the edge of town. I thought it was all superstition, all folklore designed to keep people away from what was considered unlucky land. But the moment I moved into that house, I realized just how wrong I was. I wasn't prepared for what waited inside, for the thing that had been waiting for years. The cat came first. I had no idea what I was getting into when I signed the papers for the place. The house was dilapidated, sure. The walls were peeling, the windows cracked, and the floorboards creaked in ways that made my skin crawl. But there was something about it that drew me in, some strange magnetism. Maybe I thought I could fix it, breathe life back into it, or maybe I was just tired of city life and wanted to be alone. But I wasn't alone. The first night I felt something. It wasn't a sound, not at first. It was a presence, a weight in the air. I chalked it up to the house settling, to being in a new place. But then came the scratching. It started on the second night, the kind of scratching that wasn't just from a cat. No, this was something deliberate, raking, clawing, slow and drawn out, as though the thing doing it had all the time in the world. I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself it was a stray, a mouse maybe, or just the house settling again, but the longer I listened, the more it felt like something was trying to get inside, not by force, but by patience. I heard it again the third night, clawing, scratching, but this time it was closer, right outside my bedroom door. My heart pounded as I stared at the doorknob, willing myself to move. I didn't know why, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened it. And there she was. The cat was sitting right there, on the threshold, her black fur absorbing the very darkness around her. Her eyes, those eyes, glowed with an unnatural yellow light, pupils wide and slit like a serpent's. She was still, unnaturally still, staring at me, but there was something wrong about her. Not just the eyes, not just the way she seemed to peer into my very soul. No, it was the way she waited. It was like she was measuring me, deciding something. I told her to leave, but she didn't budge. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped back, closing the door behind me. I thought I was safe, but when I turned around, she was already in the room, standing in the corner, her eyes never leaving mine. And that's when I felt it. The cold. The air grew frigid, like something unnatural had seeped into the very walls. I shivered, rubbing my arms, but it wasn't enough. I tried to push her out again, but the moment I reached for her, she hissed. The sound wasn't natural, like nails on a chalkboard, but louder, so much louder. I stumbled back as she advanced, her sleek black fur brushing against the floor like liquid shadow. "You shouldn't have opened the door," she whispered, her voice curling in my head, crawling under my skin. It was a thought, more than a sound, but it was unmistakable. I slammed the door, but it was too late. The scratching returned, but this time it was louder, more frantic, desperate, and this time it came from inside the walls. The next day I tried to ignore it. I even went outside to get some fresh air, but when I returned, the house felt different. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. The walls seemed to groan, the air was thick and damp, and there in the corner of the room was a pile of fur, black fur, but it wasn't from a cat. It was the remnants of something else. A mangled pile of flesh, shredded to pieces but still twitching. A human's arm, a leg, but it was wrong, twisted, distorted. It was as if something had ripped the very life from it. I was paralyzed, staring at it in disbelief. But then came the whispers, soft at first, barely audible. "Help me," they begged. The voice was weak, ragged, like it had been through something unspeakable. And that's when I realized the cat wasn't alone. It was her eyes, those eyes again. I saw them glowing from the corner, watching me as I stood frozen. The shadows in the room shifted, twisted, stretching as if the very house itself were alive, hungry. The cat was not just watching, she was waiting for me to make a mistake. Then it happened, the thing I'd been fearing, the thing I should have known was inevitable. That night I was awakened by the familiar scratching, but this time it was no longer the soft, distant sound of claws against wood. This was a violent, frenzied noise, scraping, tearing. The walls were buckling, creaking as if they couldn't hold back whatever was inside. And then they came. From the walls, from the floorboards, the shadows. Figures, pale, twisted bodies, crawling with unnatural speed. Their eyes, just like hers, glowed with the same sickly yellow, but their faces were distorted, twisted. They were dead, their skin pulled taut over broken bones, their mouths hanging open in grotesque, silent screams. Their claws were jagged and stained with something wet, fresh blood. They moved toward me, but they didn't make a sound. They didn't need to. The cat, now standing in the center of the room, her smile stretched wide, revealed rows of sharp, broken teeth. She was the leader, and they were her pack. I tried to run. I scrambled toward the door, my heart pounding, but the moment I touched the doorknob, I felt it. A cold hand grabbed my wrist, pulling me back into the darkness. I screamed, but no one could hear me. The cat's claws sank into my shoulder, dragging me down, her teeth sinking into my neck with a sickening crunch. The others swarmed over me, tearing at my flesh, their teeth biting into me like wolves on a kill. They were relentless, their claws raking through my skin, tearing into the muscle, the bone. The blood poured from me, pooling around me like a river, staining the floor. And through it all, the cat's eyes never left mine. "You're mine now," she whispered again, her voice a deep, guttural growl that shook my very bones. And just as I felt the last of my life draining from me, I saw her grin, wide, impossibly wide. And then everything went black. I'm telling you this now because I want you to understand. The house is not empty. The house is alive. The cat is not alone. She has a whole brood, a family of twisted things that crawl through the walls and feed on the blood of anyone who dares to enter. If you hear the scratching, if you hear the claws, do not open the door. Because once she's inside, once the blood has been spilled, you will never leave. And when you feel those eyes on you, when you see the shadow in the corner, know this, you're already dead. She's already hunting you.